to generations of moviegoers, The Sound of Music appears to be a flawless movie. It's a high-gloss gem of classic Hollywood, grand Austrian Alps, upbeat tunes, sentimental family moments, and Julie Andrews' sunny performance as Maria. It's the type of movie that feels effortless, as if it sprang complete from the Salzburg Hills, preordained to be loved for all time. But anyone who has ever walked onto a movie set knows the truth. Perfection on screen is usually the product of chaos behind the camera. The reality of The Sound of Music's making was anything but idyllic. From casting conflicts that almost killed the project, to unanticipated injuries, to harsh weather conditions, to continuity mistakes that fell through editing, the film's journey to the top was fraught with challenges. To this day, keen-eyed audiences still catch bloopers reminding us that cinema, even at its best, is an art of illusion. So, let us step behind the curtain and revisit the making of The Sound of Music. What you'll discover is not a polished fairy tale, but a messy, human story of improvisation, risk, mistakes, and last-minute miracles that somehow produced one of the most beloved films of all time. The casting battles that changed everything. Before cameras rolled, the question of who would play Maria loomed over the entire production. The role needed an actress who could bring warmth, innocence, and humor to the screen, as well as possess a powerful singing voice. A few names were floated around, including Doris Day and Shirley Jones, and even the retired Grace Kelly. But the studio craved an international star, and Julie Andrews had just burst onto the scene with her debut in Mary Poppins. Ironically, Andrews herself was reluctant to play the role. She worried audiences would view her as typecast, another wholesome nanny warbling to kids. She quipped, "I didn't want to spend my career flying in and out of nurseries with umbrellas." But director Robert Wise and screenwriter Ernest Lehman persuaded her Maria was a richer character than Mary Poppins. She wasn't magical or perfect. She was a genuine young woman who had doubts, was high-strung, and had spirit. Andrews accepted, and the casting was crucial. Without her, it is hard to picture the film taking on the international reach it did. Christopher Plummer was less a fan of his casting. Pigeonholed as the humorless, stern father figure in the role of Captain Von Trapp, he would later say in interviews that he used to call the movie The Sound of Mucus behind closed doors. He confessed to finding it overly saccharine. He drank profusely on set, although he subsequently toned down his opinion and was impressed with the film's craftsmanship. In a twist of irony, his cynicism might have been its salvation. The piercing edge he contributed to the captain evened out the film's cutesiness, making it meaningful. The Austrian hillside illusion. Undoubtedly, the most iconic shot in the movie is Julie Andrews twirling on top of a sun-drenched meadow, arms spread wide, warbling. The hills are alive with the sound of music. It appears effortless, an instant of pure movie magic. But the backstage story behind the photo illustrates just how much effort and risk was involved in producing that one image. To obtain the wide panorama, the team employed a helicopter-mounted camera flying low arcs towards Andrews as she twirled in the field. However, the downdraft from the helicopter knocked her down time and again, and she was tossed around in the grass. She had to stand up, reposition, and spin every time. It took well over 6 takes before the shot was usable, with Andrews bruised and dirty. Worst of all, the meadow was not naturally ideal for shooting. The owner of the property, a farmer, had agreed to leave the grass long, but had mowed it before the crew returned. To get the appearance, art department members built artificial additions, a false stream, relocated trees, and camera placement meant to make the meadow look fuller than it was. And meanwhile, the farmer was griping about helicopters frightening his cows and crew members damaging his fields. But out of these challenges was born movie magic. The photograph of Andrews twirling in that meadow became the iconic shot of the film, etched forever on posters and album covers. Few people know it almost didn't occur. Injuries and improvised triumphs. The filming wasn't only physically taxing for Andrews. The worst on-set injury was suffered by Charmian Carr, the actress who played Liesel. While doing the number 16 going on 17, she slipped on the wet floor of the gazebo and smashed through a pane of glass, badly cutting her leg. Instead of shutting down production, the crew bandaged her up, made changes to the choreography, and completed filming. Carr later confessed to having done several takes in agony. That gazebo held more secrets as well. The actual Salzburg gazebo was small, much too small to accommodate cameras and lighting. So the crew constructed a larger version in Hollywood. What audiences see in the dance number isn't Austrian in the least, it's California disguised as Europe. Even Julie Andrews, herself the epitome of control, contributed her own improvisation. In the middle of Do Re Mi, she belted out a final note an octave higher than she was supposed to because it felt right to her. That one spontaneous moment injected the song with a flash of victory that the crew instantly knew was magic. It remained in the final version, and years later is one of the most iconic musical outbursts of the movie. Weather woes and Salzburg struggles. If you thought filming in Salzburg was sunshine and roses, think again. The Austrian climate was unforgiving. Rain fell in sheets for days, holding up major sequences. Crew members shivered in drenched tents, praying for clear skies, while cast members struggled to stay warm between shots. During the Do Re Mi montage, where Maria and the children dance and play across mountains and parks, the production crew needed to shoot fast between rain bursts. Look closely, and you notice continuity errors. The kids' clothes suddenly drier or wetter than they were previously, grass greener in one scene and duller in another. These tiny errors went unnoticed by editors simply because they did not have the time and the budget to reshoot everything. Another issue was lighting. Extended summer days meant the sun moved perpetually, and it was difficult to keep shadows even. Cinematographers compromised, frequently employing artificial lighting to tie together incompatible footage. The end result was imperceptible to all but the most discerning viewers, yet eagle-eyed onlookers can catch glimpses of discontinuous natural light changes over a matter of seconds. The editing room lost and found scenes. As principal photography finished, director Robert Wise was presented with a daunting task. The movie was too long. The initial cuts totaled almost 4 hours, far too long for patrons. Some scenes had to be eliminated. One was a scene in which Liesl had officially introduced Rolf to Maria. Another was the Captain von Trapp singing Edelweiss in the garden, a more personal version that was substituted with the ballroom performance. Wise felt these scenes slowed down the pace, though fans later complained about the loss. Editing brought with it continuity slips. In certain scenes, the children's positions change between cuts, or props simply vanish. There was not much time in the hectic schedule to correct these, so they are present in the final cut. 13 bloopers that made it to the final cut. Despite all its gloss, The Sound of Music contains numerous little gaffes. Some are innocuous continuity errors, others more obvious. One scene. Here are 13 of the most well-known. Helicopter shadows in the hillside scene. In the initial sequence, the shadow of the helicopter is momentarily seen on the lawn. The invisible cameraman was caught by accident. Maria's dress switch. During Do Re Mi, Maria's dress switches randomly between takes, proving that several different takes over the course of many days were edited together. Captain's guitar switch. When George von Trapp sings Edelweiss, his guitar inexplicably changes location between shots. Vanishing apples. When Maria challenges the children to sing, apples on the table disappear and reappear. Wrong handkerchief. During the captain's tear in the festival scene, his handkerchief changes hands between cuts. The car that shouldn't exist. During an escape shot, a car from a later era is seen in the distance, which is in contrast with the 1930s setting. Window reflections. During 16 going on 17, crew members can be seen reflected faintly in the glass of the gazebo. Maria's missing hat. Maria's hat goes missing in one shot and then reappears in the next. The wedding veil swap. The length of Maria's veil in her wedding scene switches between shots. Children's height continuity. The Von Trapp children grow or shrink based on when shots were taken, disrupting consistency. Background extras out of era. Some background extras during Salzburg scenes are dressed with 1960s hairstyles, an awful sight from 1930s Austria. Mismatched flowers. Bouquets held by the kids change color or shape during cuts. The final escape scene. The family escapes over the Alps, but geographically the actual Von Trapps would have marched right into Nazi Germany, not Switzerland. These errors never took away from the film's strength. In fact, they lend character evidence that even films of perfection are created by humans. Legacy born from flaws. When The Sound of Music was released in 1965, the critics were split. Some ridiculed it as being too sentimental, while others complimented it for its optimism. The public, however, loved it with all their hearts. It went on to win 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and ranked as one of the biggest grossing films of all time. What is amazing is that every struggle, the injuries, the weather delays, the improvisations, the continuity blunders, melted away under the emotional strength of the film. The music, the performances, the story transcended the errors. Indeed, most fans now treasure the mistakes, finding them like secret Easter eggs on every rewatch. Julie Andrews subsequently mused, "We worked so hard, and sometimes it seemed impossible. But the joy of it saw us through." Maybe that's the point. The Hills were alive with music, but alive also with chaos, with accidents, and with human fallibility. And still, out of that flawed process came one of the cinema's greatest treasures. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. The injuries, the weather delays, the improvisations, the continuity blunders melted away under the emotional strength of the film. The music, the performances, the story transcended the errors. Indeed, most fans now treasure the mistakes, finding them like secret Easter eggs on every